Hi everybody, welcome back. In this video I'm going to show you how to take our previous example of a canvas with a bouncing ball and turn it into something a little more organized with some better abstracted code to get you ready for making something more sophisticated. What I want to do is show you a way to make multiple objects on the canvas. So not just one ball, but many balls bouncing around. And in order to do that, I'm going to define something like a class, a ball class, which from your previous course in programming, you'll remember is a way of making a template so that you can make multiple objects of that type. And so I'm going to do that with the balls in this example. All right. And I have a lot of things to say along the way. There's some syntax to learn, and then we have to talk about why it is we want to do this in the first place. What's the benefit? What do we gain? And then how, when we make multiple balls for our canvas, how do we package them and put them in some containers so that we can draw all of them and move all of them? And so there's a whole lot of stuff that's going to go into this. But let me just start off by showing you how you can clean up this code and make it so that the ball object is reusable, so you can keep manufacturing balls again and again. So right now what you have is the code from the last tutorial, which is exactly how it was at the end. Right? So you can see it here. If you haven't watched that video yet, you should go back and see it so you understand how we got here. And what I'm doing here is I'm defining a single ball object, sometimes referred to as a singleton object. It's just one. And you can see it, and here it is drawn on the screen. All right, this is the data that encapsulates the ball. And then down here, this is where it's drawn. So this is just drawing code. This is the actual information that is the ball itself, this object that you see here. And you can see it has 4 properties and 2 methods that it knows how to do. Okay. All right. So now to make this code more reusable and more abstracted, first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and just comment that all out. Okay. So the ball is no longer defined. It's declared, but it's not defined. So none of these properties exist right now. We're going to save that, run it. Immediately we're going to have an error popping up here on line 26 right here. It says cannot read property X of undefined. And I just want to point that out because it means something, right? If we go to line 26, we can see cannot read property X of undefined. We can't read property X, that's that of undefined. Sure, right, because the ball is not defined. I got rid of the code that defines it. All right, clear. Let's comment this all out in the meantime. We don't need it. I'm going to come down here and start the process of defining a ball class. And I do it this way, function ball with parentheses and then curly braces. Now this is not really a class. In true class-oriented languages, you would use the keyword class, and then you put class ball, some such thing like that. Now it is true that JavaScript allows classes. There is a true class and class definition in JavaScript, but only in the latest version of JavaScript. And so much of the web is powered by JavaScript that was written years ago where this was not possible that I don't want to use it. Okay, I want to show you the way that's been used for a long time to sort of fake a class by using a function. Also, to make things a little more complicated, because P5.js technically allows classes, you can also use it in that context. But again, I'm not interested in showing you that. I want to show you something that just works all the time in JavaScript and is the way that it's done, and has been done for years and years and years. Okay, and so the way you define a class in JavaScript is to use keyword function, type the name of the class, and I highly suggest you capitalize it because traditionally classes are capitalized in class-oriented languages. And that's just helpful. You don't have to capitalize it. This is acceptable, but it's easier for somebody else looking at your code and for you to understand that what you mean by this is a ball class. In fact, you can define a ball class. Some people would say I should use keyword pseudo ball class here. And you can read about the differences if you want to, like why is it not really a class and what would be different if it was, and some of the nuances of what you have to really have to be an official class, and what languages allow that and what languages don't. You can read about that, but for our purposes, it's not essential to get into those details here today. For all intents and purposes, this is going to function as a class definition of an object. Okay, so here we go. So first thing you do inside is you list your properties of the class, and I'm just going to steal them from what I have right up here. I'm basically going to reuse this code. The syntax is going to be a little bit different. I have to use keyword this. So I say this.x equals, and I'll use the same values from above. So this.x equals 20. Notice that I need the keyword this where I didn't need it here. Okay, because I'm referring to which ball? This ball. When I instantiate a ball later on, it will be this one that I'm instantiating, whose value of x I want to be 20. So keyword this has to be used, .x, and then notice that the colon gets replaced by an equal sign. All right, so that's the difference. And now I can say this.y equals, and we'll stick to 50, and then I can say this.vx equals 2, and this.vy equals 2 as well. All right, these can actually be commas if you wanted them to be in this context. That's actually acceptable in this case too, but I'll leave them as semicolons. All right, so that is my list of properties. So define and declare the properties attributes / instance variables. These things are called different terms in different languages. All right, but they're all the same thing. Now let's define the move function from here. Okay, so again, the syntax is just a little bit different. Now define the methods. Right, if a method is just a function in a class. So this dot move. Okay, this dot move equals function. Again, looks a lot like we have up here, but we need keyword this. And we replace the colon with an equal sign, and then we type keyword function, and then basically I'm just going to take this code from up here and just copy it, and we'll put it right there. Okay, if you want it to look a little bit neater, we could put it on different lines. Some people prefer it that way, and that is my move function. Okay, there you go. And then the end of my ball class is right there. I'm not going to make bounce yet, so I just have my 4 properties and my move function, and that's my class, my ball class. I still don't have a ball, but at least I have the template for making one. So if I come back here and run it, I don't have a ball yet, so I don't see anything. Not only that, but I'm not even drawing, I don't think. There it is, right? So if I put this stuff back, if I uncomment the drawing of the ellipse and then the move function, it still will throw an error. And look, it says cannot read property x of undefined, just like it did before, because I'm still trying to get a reference to the x property of a ball that doesn't exist. So just because I made the class doesn't mean that I've actually made a ball yet. Okay, so now I have to go and instantiate, that's that word, instantiate an actual ball from the ball class. And so I want you to think back and remember that from your last course that classes are a lot like molds, like a mold for making something. If you know that you're going to make 1,000 or 10,000 of some object, then what you do is you make yourself a mold and pour the substrate or whatever it is into that mold, and you can keep making copy after copy of that object, maybe slightly customized. Right? And that's just the quick way and the organized way to mass produce things. I mean, we do it with all sorts of things in life, don't we? We build factories to make cars because we know we're going to make 20,000, 50,000 of a particular automobile. So we build a factory, and that factory's sole job is to make that one car, and then thousands of those cars just roll off the assembly line. And that's what we're doing with programming as well. We're trying to organize our code in a way so that we can make a reusable chunk, a reusable method, function, class, whatever it is that just sort of stamps out ball after ball after ball after ball. And this is that thing. But we still have to make them. We still have to actually instantiate the ball. So I have my declaration var ball up here. And so somewhere down in here, I'm just going to come in here and say, okay, ball equals ready? New ball, keyword new, and then the name of the function which is subbing as a class, right there. It's almost as if this function is the constructor method inside of a class. If you think back to how you defined classes in your previous course, every class had a constructor that had the same name as the class, and it was something like this, right? But this is just a naked constructor all by itself without the class wrapping it. It's sort of what it's like, okay? So there you go, ball equals new ball. And then I can just, I don't even need to see that anymore. Well, actually, I'm going to leave it because I want to steal the bounce function later rather than typing it again. Okay, so we'll leave that code there, refresh the page, and there it is. You can see the ball, but it doesn't bounce because I don't have it yet. I don't have the function put in yet. So let's go add that, all right? So first off, I'm going to just come here and copy this because I don't feel like writing that Boolean logic a second time. So then down here, below my move function, I'm going to say this.bounce equals function. Here we go. And I'll just paste that right in there from before. All right, so that's the code that checks the extents of the screen, top and bottom. And I'm going to try to run it. It's not going to work. There's going to be a problem with that. Well, yeah, there is a problem. It doesn't work at all. That's probably because I'm not calling it. But there you go. So I'm going to call it now, ball.bounce. It's still not going to work. This is what I was anticipating. There'll be an error. You see, oh, there it is. Right. Reference error, CANV is not defined. CNV is not defined at line 48. 48, that's this one. Right here, it's a CANV is not defined. I wonder why. I'm trying to extract the width and the height of the canvas to use inside this bounce function. I don't know why that's not defined. I have it right up here, var CANV. Why is CANV not defined if I have it right up here? Oh yeah, of course. I want to point this out because this happens all the time and you wonder what's going on. So this is a variable scope problem. The scope of the CANV variable, where it can be seen and accessed from, is not global. In other words, the variable is defined inside of setup, declared and defined inside of setup, and it only exists inside of setup. It's not accessible from outside setup, and clearly we're not still inside setup when we're in here. So this variable does not exist from the point of view, from the very provincial and local point of view of this function ball. It can't access it. Now there are a couple ways around it, but I'm just going to be a little lazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take that variable and promote it to global status by declaring it up here, var canv. It now becomes global on the page. I just get rid of keyword var here. So now it's declared here globally, but defined here inside of setup. And that means I can access it from everywhere. All right, any function that's included in any JavaScript on this page can access CANV. And you may say, well, that's great. Why is everything not that way? Well, because generally speaking, the more global variables you have on a page, the more times you might accidentally collide with that variable name. In other words, later on, when your JavaScript becomes 5,000 lines long, you might decide to create another variable called CANV, and it'll overwrite the value of this variable. So if the two variables are in the same scope, things like that can start happening. When you have multiple people working on a project together, you can wind up running into those problems. So it's tempting to make everything global, like I just did, but it's bad practice to do that. For the sake of this simple example, we're not there yet. This is perfectly fine. So I'm going to make it global, declare it, define it, and now all is well with my canvas. Right, there's the ball and it's bouncing. Great. All right, so I've changed nothing from a functional standpoint. This looks just like it did at the end of the last tutorial. So you're sitting here wondering, why have I just been watching for 20 minutes or whatever, and I've gotten nowhere. I don't know what I've accomplished. It looks the same. All right, so, but watch. I'm going to get rid of this. I don't need it anymore. Okay. So what I can now do, because I have this ball class here, sort of, is I can make yet another ball. So let's define var ball 2. And I don't need to kind of make a whole list of all these properties again, because here I can just say ball 2 equals new ball. Oops, like that. That's it. And now I've reused my factory production code for making balls a second time. Okay, it's var ball 2. Right, now, if I want to see it, well, I'm going to have to draw that one as well. Okay, so I'm going to need to take all this code and copy it and change this to ball2.x, ball2.y. We'll make it a different size. We'll make it 30-30. Okay, so that'll draw bigger. And then we'll say ball2.move, ball2.bounce. And then we'll run it. Now, but I only see one. I only see, in fact, I see the bigger one, right? I see something that is clearly bigger than what was there before. I see the one that's got a radius of 30. I see ball 2. Where's ball 1, or just ball? Right? If you stop and think about it for a while, it should start to become pretty clear that I'm never going to see it. Right? Because it's got all the same properties as the other ball. So they're literally in the same place. Right? And the bigger one is drawn second, so it's going to be drawn on top of the smaller one. You're never going to see the little one because they're in the same position at the same times and they have the same velocity, so they're always just going to track with each other, one on top of the other one. So that's not good, right? That sort of defeats the purpose of what I did, didn't it? Right? But this is where it gets interesting. I don't have to hard code these things inside the constructor, right? I don't have to hard code them at all. What I can do is, in here, I can allow myself some parameters. So I can pass in these values when I make the balls. In other words, I can specify, I want this ball to be at 20, 20, and have velocity 3, 4. But then this ball, I don't want that. I want it to be at 100, 100, and I want it to have velocity -2, -5. Right? I can do that sort of thing if I want to. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead, right, and I'm going to adapt my ball class to accept those arguments that I'm going to put in right here. So back to my class. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is just put in x_i. How's that for initial, or just xi? So it's the initial x position where I want the ball, xi, and then we'll say yi, right? And then we can keep going with vi and or vxi, so on and so forth. But you know what, I think just to kind of show you some variety, I can make some of these things random and let the browser just pick them for me. So I'm going to hard code my xi and my yi, but I'm not going to do that with the velocities. So let's take this and we'll set that equal to that. Right? Set that parameter equal to this one. Okay, so this.i is that parameter there, and then I think I'll use random here. And the way you do random in JavaScript is you say math.random. And I think if I recall correctly that only returns a number between 0 and 1. So I'm going to need to scale that. It's not like it is in processing. It's a little more friendly in processing. So if I come back here, I've actually got the tab open in my browser already. And you can see it is math.random. It says returns a random number. Always lower than 1. It's going to be a decimal. It says, well, if you want an integer, you can do this. And so I'm just going to take this and copy it right here. Okay, this will return a random integer from 0 to 9. And so it's math.random. Then it gets multiplied by 10. And then I take the floor of that, which is basically just a way of rounding down, right? So I don't have the decimal, because I don't want it. There actually would be no harm in leaving it, right? But we'll do without it. All right, so there you go. So the velocities will be drawn randomly, but the x and the y position will be hard-coded by me when I instantiate the ball. So I'll need to provide 2 arguments to the ball function. So that means here I'm going to put in, so we'll put in 20, 20, like we had before. Right? And then we'll put in 100, 100 for the next one. So ball 1 and ball 2, and then they both get drawn in here. Let's try it. There they are. Okay, let's refresh and notice every time I do, they're going to be a little different. They're always starting in the same place, but their velocities are different each time, and that's that random. Okay, so I've got 2 balls. Now if I wanted a third, well, I think you know how I'd do that, right? I would have to come up here, and I would say bar ball 3, and then I'd have to go and make another one, and another one, and so on and so forth. All right, so now this is the culmination of all of it. We're going to end with this. So obviously there's got to be a better way to do this than defining individual variables for each ball and writing code to draw each one and move each one. Draw and move, right? There's got to be a way to kind of package these things together in a meaningful way and just do something to all of them. And that certainly exists. The idea is to use a list or an array. These things exist in all programming languages. An array or list is basically just a box or a package for putting multiple objects or multiple primitive data types inside. It's a container. Right? So the analogy I like to use is moving. When I say, if you're moving from your house and the moving truck pulls up and you have to empty out the contents of your house, you don't bring out each thing one by one to put it in the moving truck, right? You kind of put the things in boxes. You package up these boxes and then you carry the box out, and that's just more efficient because you can put 200 things in one box and carry the box all at once. And that's what we're doing in an attempt to organize our programs. We're going to use lists and arrays to package things together and operate on everything all at once. All right, so let me show you how this goes, and then that'll wrap it up for this tutorial. So instead of var ball 1, var ball 2, ball 3, and all that stuff, I'm just going to say var balls. Like that. And that's the syntax for declaring an empty array. So balls is an array of nothing. So you use a square bracket followed by another square bracket, and then that's it. Okay? And then in your setup function, what you can do is you can start populating the array or putting things into the array or filling it up with individual balls. Okay, so I can say, if I want to, I can now take, after I put ball equals new ball, right here, I can say balls dot push ball. And now that's a little bit of a strange syntax, the keyword push. It just means that you're taking this ball object and you're shoving it into this container. All right, imagine you're pushing something into a box. So that's why that syntax is used, I think. You're pushing the ball into the container of balls. And then I can do the same thing here. I can say balls dot push ball 2. And what that'll do is that'll actually take both ball and ball 2 and put them in this array. And in fact, if I want to look at the array, if I then do a console.log balls, right? Look what I get. I'm going to print that out in the sidebar of the browser. So refresh the page. Oh, there's an error first. Let's see. Ball.push is not a function at setup draw line 14. Yes, because it's not. It's balls plural because the name of the array is balls. Okay, so come back, refresh, and here's the printout. You could see the array right there. It's real nice. You get the square brackets and it says, well, what's in it? Well, there are 2 things in it, right? A ball and a ball, and you can expand. And when you expand, you actually see the objects themselves. You get to see a printout of all of the properties of the object, where it is, what its velocities are, so on and so forth. Right? You can see ball 1, x, y, vx, vy. Right? The 0th element is the first one. Then element number 1 shows the second one. Remember, arrays are 0 indexed in Java, and they are as well here in JavaScript. The first element of the array starts with a 0. It's really kind of curious why the x and the y positions are not the initial positions of the ball that I specified. Right? They're not. So I'll let you think about why that is a little bit. Okay, so there's my array. Now, to make it a little bit cleaner, why even have this variable at all? why not just take this right out of here? Watch this. We'll just take this out, right? We'll copy that out of there. We'll just put it right inside here, like that. Look at how nice that is, right? That's it. And then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take this out, just cut it out of there, just put it right in there. So there's no need to ever even define ball 1 and ball 2, declare them, whatever. There's no need to even have them. You just call the constructor right there inside the push method, shove them into the array, right? And now I've got 2 balls inside the array. Now the problem is this isn't going to draw them if I go back and refresh, right? So I still have a problem in my drawing code down at the bottom, so we're going to have to take a look at that. Okay, so I'm actually going to comment all of this out because that doesn't work. But there's still, if you look, you can still see there's still an array of 2 balls, right? There's one, and there's the other. Notice that now, by the way, they actually show up with their x and y properties as being the initial properties, or the initial values that I set. Okay, so again, think about why that is. It has to do with the way the code was before versus the way that it is now. Now I have to find this in here as opposed to having it on a previous line. All right, so that's a super interesting thing. If you can figure that out, you know, let me know. All right, I'll tell you if you're right. So with that in mind, I've got this array with 2 balls in it. So now I'm going to come down here to my drawing code, right? And I don't really need to do all this anymore. Instead, I'm just going to loop through that array using a for loop. And I'm going to draw each ball. And I'm going to move each ball. Here, it goes something like this. Now, again, for those of you who don't remember what for loops look like, this is a good refresher right now. For var I equals 0. I is less than balls dot length. I equals I plus 1. Although usually we don't write that, we just say this, plus plus, like that. And then I put my code in here. That's a classic for loop. The for loop, we define the counter, the name of the counter variable. It's usually an I, could be a J, could be a K. Those are common letters to use, right? And then we define where that, as that counter keeps on counting up, where does it end? When do we want the looping to end, right? And here we just call in the length property of the balls array, which is going to return 2 because there are 2 things in it. And then we increment the counter like that. And then inside here, any code that we put will happen as many times as there are elements in the ball array. The balls array. There's 2 elements in there. There's 2 balls in there, so this code's going to happen twice. And so what we can say is, we could say ellipse balls I dot x comma balls I dot y comma 20 20, and that will draw every ball in the array. Now it's going to draw them the same size because I'm hard coding the 20 and the 20, but this would be a perfectly good opportunity to go back and to give each ball in here a particular radius that it owned, and then to call on its radius property here, balls I dot r, or some such variable, so that each ball was drawn as a different size. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave that to you as an exercise or an opportunity after the fact. All right, so all the balls will be 20 by 20. All right, that'll draw them. Let's take a look at it. There they are. There's 2. They're not moving, okay? But to make a move, again, all I have to do is say balls I dot move. Refresh. There, they're moving. There they go. Want to make them bounce? Balls I dot bounce. Here we go. Super. All right. Clean code. Minimal number of lines. I don't need any of that anymore. I can get rid of it. Okay. Now, I think you probably can see where I'm going with this. There's no reason to stop at 2. Right? With this array, I can just make another ball. Balls dot push Let's make a third one. New ball. Let's put this one at 80, 200. Let's see what happens. Oh, let's see. What did I do? Reference ball is not defined. Oh, again, I did this before. Balls, plural. Right? The array is called balls. There they go. There's 3. Right? Want another one? No problem. I don't know, 60, 300. That might be too big. That's probably off the canvas. 300, 60. Let's do that. All right, now we have 4. Excellent. Right? In fact, if you really wanted to get fancy, you could comment all that out. We don't need that either. Right? And you could just say something like this. Just write another for loop. For int I. We can use I again here if we want to. It won't conflict with the I that we used here at all. I equals 0. I is less than 20. I plus plus. Okay. Balls dot push new ball. And I want them all to be in different places. So I'm going to use, in this case, a math.random. Again, I'll just come down here and copy this code. Math.random right here. Right, so we'll make them here. So where do you want to put the ball? This is just the x coordinate, right? So I'm going to put it at math.floor, math.random, not times 10, but I'm going to do canv.width. That might be running into some trouble there because I might be putting the ball too far, so it's sort of right at the edge of the canvas. It might get stuck and not be able to bounce correctly. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but that's okay. All right. So that's my first argument. Let's copy that. Let's put in my y coordinate right there. And then I don't believe I need to put in the velocities because those are chosen randomly already inside the constructor. Okay, so if I was going to do this, it'd probably be better to go back and make the constructor just choose these 2 things at random rather than trying to, put them in here as I did. It's just a little bit, it gets a little long. The line gets a little long, right? Okay, I could space it out and put it on a separate line if I wanted to. Let's see what that does. A syntax error on line 11. What have I done? Let's see. Of course. Int. Yeah, of course. This is not Java. There's no int in JavaScript. It's just var. Okay. There we go. All right, line 12. Unexpected token. Parentheses. So I feared this. I got my parentheses wrong. So it's just not the right number. So, oh gosh, there's so many parentheses. I don't know where to begin. Well, let's try getting rid of 1, see what happens. No, that's definitely not it. Let's try putting another 1 in. No. Okay, that can't be right. All right, so that means I'm going to have to go back and count parentheses, which I truly do not feel like doing. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to... Again, I'm being incredibly lazy here. This is just terrible. So I'm going to just say, let's go like this. All right, let's say new ball, just like that. And then I'll just take this, right? And we'll just take this code that we see right here, and we'll just put it, that line right there, we'll just put it right there. And we'll just put it right there. And then I'll just make these bigger instead of by 10. I'll just say canv.width. And finally here, I'm just going to say canv.height, like that. All right, and then the constructor doesn't take any arguments anymore. I let randomness choose everything for me. And then I can just 20 times, right? Less than 20. I'm going to make a ball and push it into the array. I have no idea where it's going to make them, but I still have an error on line 11. Let's see, what's the problem? Line 11 for int I. Again, int returned when I hit undo. There we go. There it is. So there's 20 bouncing balls. Right, and then what we can do is if you want to kind of get really fancy, we can say var number balls equals 20. And then in here, we don't need to do 20. We can say number balls, like that. And so now, I don't even have to come down here and look at this code anymore. I can just come up here and change that number. Let's make 50. Here we go. Ready? 50. Well, it looks like at least one got a velocity of 0. Okay, let's go. Let's make it 80. Okay. I wonder how many can do. Let's do 200. There, at some point, it's going to start slowing down, rendering that many. Okay, so I hope you can appreciate the power of doing this. So I've combined a whole lot of things today. There's several techniques that are used. So just to recap real quickly, we started off with a single ball bouncing around on a canvas. I used JavaScript object notation to define it. That was from the last video. I got rid of that. Instead, I made a ball class, or a pseudo ball class. It acts like a class anyway, using a function, capital ball. I defined the properties inside of it. I defined the methods, move and bounce inside of it as well. The syntax is a little bit different than it was in the previous tutorial, but it's not hard. At one point, I had arguments in here, parameters, and arguments had to be passed in when you instantiated the ball. Okay, and that way you could specify the positions of the different balls on the screen. But eventually, I just moved to letting randomness pick them for me. And I finally ended by just creating an array or a list of a container to hold all the balls. And then I just used a for loop to generate n number of balls, as many as I wanted to here, right? And that just generates each ball one at a time. They get random positions and velocities. They get pushed or shoved into the array. And then down inside the draw function, wherever that is right here, I'm actually just going to loop right through that very same array right here. And I'm going to draw each ball. I'm going to move each ball. I'm going to bounce each ball. Make sure you understand this syntax, this balls, square brackets, I dot x, balls, square brackets, I dot y. Understanding and really being able to generate this syntax for yourself is really the most important thing that you can have going forward. This is everything in computing. The ability to write loops and then to iteratively process each and every element inside an array by accessing it and doing something to each element, that's really where it's at. This is key. So this, if I had to kind of point to any lines of code in this whole tutorial that are just absolutely essential and important, obviously there's this, right? But this is just crucial to be able to understand. And if you listen carefully, you can hear my fan starting to go spool up because just the number of balls that it's kind of keeping track of and rendering is getting, it's large. You can hear my processor working hard. All right. Well, that's it for this tutorial. We're going to follow up with the next one, which is going to talk about how to use mouse presses on the canvas and to get coordinates and to make new balls in real time. All right. So hopefully this was helpful. If you're watching this from my class at school, then you're going to have a follow-up assignment. Your assignment is going to be to do basically this, but to take your objects that you're drawing, whatever they are, whatever objects you're putting on your canvas, and to customize them in some further way by giving them all different sizes and all different colors. So you would be adding properties inside your object class so that when these things got drawn, they got drawn with different fill colors and of different sizes or shapes or some such thing. All right, so that'll be the follow-up. But again, if you're in my class, you know that, and you've already seen the assignment. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care.